Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to thank and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Hi everyone, and welcome to Room by Room, the Home Organisation Science Insights podcast, produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We're champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element, with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Gabriella Joustra, coming to you from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's begin. Hi everyone, and welcome to the show. Today we're going to be talking about how to express your style, the art of home decoration. And I'm talking to Emily Bihl, who is a writer specializing in home decor, fashion and lifestyle content. Hi, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me. Before we get started, I would love to learn a bit more about you.
Okay. I am a writer, as you said. I started my career in the fashion industry, working with, some of these big labels that I would be an editorial writer for. I've had a couple transitions throughout the rest of my career, coming over to the interiors space, where I do a fair amount of writing about design, how to decorate, things like that. And I've also worked extensively in the advertising industry. So hopped around a little bit, but my first love has always been both writing and all things aesthetic.
Amazing. And I think it's really great to, get a bit of a mix of everything because it keeps you interested and also gives you such a good broad range to work from.
Absolutely. I can never just do one thing. I always have to find a new way to explore it.
Great. And I'm very much excited to talk to you about home decoration. And also we've got a little bit of fashion, I think, in there as well. So very much looking forward to that. But before we get into that, we're going to do a section called Have You Met Emily, where we get to know you through some of your favorite things. And the first thing I'd like to know is, what is your favorite book?
So my favorite book is actually Just Kids by Patti Smith. This is a book that I have returned to so many different times in my life. And it might not seem like it has that much to do with our topics today on the face of it, but I think what really draws me to it, in addition to just her incredible writing style that I respect so much, is just this image that she's able to paint of New York City in a very different time than we know it today. So lots of beautiful aesthetics happening there, very creative scene, and I just return to it again and again.
Sounds great. I've never thought about the aesthetics of a book or like architecture in a book. It must be hard to convey.
Well, I mean, the time and place that she's talking about is such a time of kind of artistic and musical resurgence. So I think it comes naturally to her to really describe everything visually that's happening at the time as well.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. And have you enjoyed any movies recently?
I have, and this is another one that is maybe a little bit out there, but there's this film that I saw recently called The Wonder, and it's a Florence Pugh movie that came out maybe a couple years ago, and it's actually this very interesting story about this young girl who is kind of lauded as being maybe, a modern day saint because she has given up eating ostensibly. And actually the way that the story itself is told is very much this perspective of the stories we tell ourselves are the stories that shape our lives, right? And we're able to tell ourselves something, and that has an incredible impact on, how we actually live. And so that idea has really burrowed into me, and I keep thinking about it. I think I've thought about this movie every single day since I saw it. So it's definitely a kind of intense one. It's a little more on the fringe maybe, but it has really kind of gotten under my skin.
Okay. I think I do love movies that are maybe about something a bit like maybe not quite normal, exploring different aspects of ourselves and of society. So that sounds really interesting. And I think Florence Pugh has had a lot of really great movies. So I'm sure maybe I trust her and I would watch anything that she's in.
Absolutely. That's kind of how I came to it. I just have great respect for her. And yeah, she has an incredible performance in that. So
Great. Thank you for the recommendation. And do you listen to any podcasts?
yes, I am a big podcast listener. I have a couple that are kind of in my regular rotation. 99% Invisible. I'm sure everyone who comes on this show probably says that they have a relationship with that. And that's definitely a favorite of mine. But also a podcast by Avery Trufelman called Articles of Interest, where she really delves into these different kind of items in fashion, or even prints and production processes in fashion, and just picks them apart in a way that I find really fascinating. So that's really at the intersection of all of my interests, and I love that one.
I actually love both of those podcasts.
Yeah.
They're very, very good.
Yeah, I really never thought that I would listen to, multiple hours or, about a pattern or, paisley print or something like that. But the way that she deconstructs it is just, you're hooked.
And I think we just don't realize how much clothing is influenced by us, and how much history there is, and how much clothing influences us as well. So yeah, I would recommend that. I'm glad to hear you would recommend it too.
Absolutely.
Do you have a role model?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this question a lot. And I think that maybe the reason that I'm finding it kind of sticky is because I have kind of bounced around in these different industries and bounced around in these different disciplines. But I kind of have settled on two. So one has to go back to my book recommendation. So Patti Smith is, just someone who I look up to a lot, just because she is able to, even though she's known for music, really transcend in terms of having this incredible book and her writing, and then also in her younger years being someone who's very interested in visual arts as well. And I think I really gravitate towards people who kind of defy that easy characterization like that. So that would maybe be one. And then maybe on the other end of the spectrum, I've been thinking a lot about Martha Stewart lately as someone who is clearly interested in so many different things and has reinvented herself so many different times, and has been able to not just kind of build this empire, but also, I think, bring real public perception of value to these areas that have sometimes been, devalued by, being kind of women's work or, these domestic ideas. So I've been thinking a lot about her as well in terms of kind of a role model.
And I think she's also very influential here as well for this podcast, because, we're talking about home organization, which is also traditionally thought of as a woman's work. But I mean, home is for everyone, and everyone needs a really good home. And so we need to value it, not just women, but also everyone, for everyone's sake.
Absolutely. I think that's really important to be able to, I think what she's done in her career is say, this actually takes a great amount of skill, and this takes a great amount of attention to detail and understanding of how people actually interact with spaces and things. And it's just really interesting to see that.
And so that sort of brings me to my next question, which is, how do you define home organization?
Sure. Well, for me, it really is about the systems that allow you to use your space in the way that you want to use it. And the reason I say systems is I think it's easier to tell when systems are not working than, when they are. When they're working, they're invisible, is kind of that 99% invisible idea. But when they're not working, you really notice, oh, I want to use my home for XYZ. I want to use my home for entertaining. But there's a barrier to me entertaining, which is that I have to rearrange my space. I have to clear off all of my surfaces. Those are maybe clues that your systems are not working. So that's just kind of why I think of it as systems. And it doesn't have to be a system that makes sense to anyone else or even is visible to the untrained eye. It just has to be something that that works and is reliable for you.
Okay. I love how it's systems, and you're allowing it to work for everyone, to be quite individual. And so we're going to be talking about home decoration today. And I feel like in some ways, home organization is, maybe putting things into boxes and making sure everything looks tidy. And I feel like in some ways, home decoration is the opposite of that. It's putting things out and visible. So what is home decoration, and how does it interact with home organization?
Sure. Yeah, I think the word decoration actually is really interesting because when we think of something being kind of decorative, we almost assume that it doesn't have like a practical function to it. And for me, obviously, if your home is a good expression of you, if it's reflective of your personality and your aesthetic, everything is really serving some kind of function, even if that is just an aesthetic function. So, I think maybe decoration and organization don't necessarily butt up against each other exactly as much as it sounds on first glance. But yeah, for me, I think what you choose to display, as you kind of put it, says a lot about both the person that you are and the person that you want to be perceived as. And I think the way that you start to understand home decoration or home design really is about making sure that that's kind of aligned with your values. So, some function in the decoration as well.
So yeah, function in the decoration, but also decoration as a function of showing who you are and how you want to exist in that area.
Exactly. And I think by making it a place that feels like you, I think that's kind of a phrase that's tossed around is make your home feel like you. But I think it's important because it is going to also change the way you interact with it. It's going to make it a place that's naturally comfortable for you. And hopefully it's also going to make it a place that, either attracts the kind of people who you want to have over in your home or at minimum doesn't become a barrier to that.
They don't have to like it, but they shouldn't be put off by it.
Well, sure. And it's just, again, going back to function, it shouldn't be causing issues if that's how you want to use your home for entertaining and things like that.
So you mentioned like finding personal style as part of this so that you feel comfortable and at home. But I mean, I've been personally on a bit of a self-discovery journey recently trying to figure out my fashion sense because I've, feel like as we change and we get older, things change. And I've got a lot of clothes I don't like that I've been wearing. And I kind of feel the same with my home. So, but I'm just so lost. I'm like looking at different styles of different homes. Like, do I want a more natural style? Do I want a more modern style? And I like bits and pieces of everything, but nothing really seems to be cohesive. So how do you find your personal style? Like where do you start?
Yeah, I think that's a question that's really daunting to a lot of people. And I think that it in part comes from this anxiety over, like you said, looking at different styles that kind of feel like they appear as a whole package in front of you in a magazine or a blog or, whatever photography you're looking at. You don't get to see kind of the process through which they arrived at that. And so it feels like, oh, Scandinavian, it looks like this. And something that's a little bit more organic or, contemporary, like it just looks like this. And I think the pressure to adhere to one of those styles is a completely invented pressure. It's not something that most people actually really give themselves 100% over to. And so for me, when someone is trying to kind of discover what their personal style is, first of all, I would, kind of look at clothing and look at the things that they feel comfortable in wearing on their bodies. I think that's a good way to, you have to get dressed every day. So a lot of people kind of find their style of dressing just out of necessity, whereas, you don't have to have a home that reflects you. So it's a good kind of starting place. But if you are also going through a kind of personal style journey in terms of what you wear as well, the best thing I can say is really, I think that design and I think that interiors and I think that your clothing should be referential. But what I mean by that is you can find these little ways to nod back to a clothing item that you've really loved in the past that you no longer have, or something that you remember really fondly, and you can do that in your home as well. And I think that's a really, hopefully not intimidating way for people to start, because you have all these memories and you have all of these experiences to draw from. And if you can translate some of those into the things that you want to surround yourself with and wear, then you're starting from a place that you understand.
Okay, so maybe, for example, you have a top that you loved the color of, and maybe it's gotten a bit old, it's got a few holes, but you still love the color. So you maybe translate that into like maybe some furnishing color.
Absolutely. I mean, the cliche is definitely true that people say of like what feels good to wear is going to feel good around you as well. And I think it's really good to experiment with that. Even if it is a color that you only wore on a very special occasion, or it was something you would never wear in your day to day, but you felt really powerful in that. It makes sense to translate that into I'm going to feel powerful in my space, or something that, makes you feel relaxed, a texture that you love of, a favorite sweater or something. Bring that into the textiles in your home, because it's coming from something that you feel a certain way about. So you're not kind of starting from scratch, and you can really start to reference those items in your surroundings.
And what happens if you've got two different styles that you like to wear? And like with clothing, it's very easy because one day you can dress in a certain way and the next day you can wear something else. So for example, for me, I feel like I go between loving lots of color and wearing almost all black.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in wearing all black as well. It's actually, I mean, I am in a rare form today that I'm not wearing black, but and my home is actually like relatively colorful for someone who is really known as wearing all black all the time. So I definitely sympathize with that quandary. But I think that you can just really pay attention to what you're drawn to. And I won't say that 100% of the time, if you throw everything that you love together into one room, it's always going to work out. People kind of like to say this of, it'll work out in the end, it'll work out in the end. Sometimes it might not, but I think that experimentation is important. And I think that there will be enough commonality if you pay attention to what are the elements of this that I like versus just, I love this Hawaiian print velvet chair and I have to have it. And that might be fine and that might work perfectly in your home, or it might come up with a new combination of styles that actually just clicks into place. Or you might want to spend a little bit more time thinking, okay, well, why do I love this? Do I love the colors of it? Do I love the boldness of the print? Do I love the silhouette of the chair? Does the silhouette remind me of something else that I have either in my home or that is, from my personal history? Because then you can really zero in on, well, maybe I won't buy this chair today, but it has these legs that remind me of the legs of the table in my grandparents' house. And that's a line and a shape that I have repeated in my own home or something like that, where, okay, repeating that shape again and again, or repeating that line of that leg, maybe it will work together. You can really kind of zero in on what is it that draws you to these different items. And I think that's where kind of the referential element comes in and hopefully helps make your aesthetic a little more cohesive, even if it has very disparate elements.
And it also seems like, having a bit of experimentation and just trying out different things is also part of it.
Yes, absolutely. I think so. And I mean, I think there's so much, unfortunately, fear around decorating. And I completely understand why, an expensive rug is an expensive mistake if it doesn't work, right? It's a lot more than, a top or a jacket. But at the same time, I worry that this kind of trend, or I hope it's a trend, of people decorating for some future person's approval, some future buyer of their home who isn't them that they have to resell to, or some future critic who's going to walk through the door and say, I can't believe that you put that color with that color. And in the process of that, you're not decorating and you're not designing for yourself. And really, you're robbing yourself of the experience of getting to live in the home while you do live in the home, right? So I hope that that even though it does seem scary to experiment, that people can kind of learn to experiment and learn to be comfortable with, okay, this didn't go together the way that I thought it would, but I can still figure out a way to make everything feel harmonious. And again, sometimes having a quote unquote mistake or something that looks a little bit off actually is a great reflection of your personality in a fun way. And I think that should be incorporated too.
So, I mean, and I'm also wondering, if you are a bit scared of experimenting, particularly with some of those more expensive pieces, as you mentioned, a rug, bigger pieces of furniture, sofas and things, Would you say, maybe what are some cheaper ways that we can experiment without, spending $1,000 on a piece of furniture that's going to be very hard to replace?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, paint colors are the old standby, right? Because it is truly the most kind of affordable, equitable way to really change how a room feels. Again, it's a cliche because it's true. So that is definitely something that I always advise experimenting with. The other thing is, we all have a kind of powder room or a bathroom in our apartments, right? Or in our homes. I think that is the best place to experiment because it's a small space, usually. It's completely enclosed. So speaking earlier, about how do I know if it's this style or this style that I want to go for, you don't have to have that match any other style in the rest of your home. So it's a very kind of safe place to experiment. And also, you're probably not going to be changing out major fixtures. So really, it's a place where small accessories and little changes, a framed print on the wall, whatever, is going to have a big impact, and it's going to allow you to kind of play around with some of those things. Now, if you are kind of set on decorating a larger space in your home and you do kind of want to experiment, like you said, I definitely think textiles are the best way to start after paint. It's really easy to see a throw pillow, a blanket, something that, brings in more texture. And I think that 9 times out of 10, if people are unhappy with where their home looks currently, like what they're currently working with, bringing in more texture is going to help that. So definitely suggest that. And again, art, framed prints, I always have a giant stack of things that I need to get frames for because I just love buying little, pieces at the craft market or things I've discovered. It's a pretty affordable way to not only express yourself, but also start a collection, which, kind of helps anchor a space.
Yeah, I'm currently collecting art prints, and I've now got too many to put on the walls. And I'm like, which one do I like? I can swap them around if I get bored of them.
Yeah, I think swapping them around is great because it does give you that flexibility, and you can live with something for a little while and say, yeah, I lived with it for a while, and maybe there's another opportunity to change it up, or maybe this goes somewhere else where I would get to appreciate it more. So it's very low risk.
So you did mention, we've got to find our own personal style and, experiment with different things. But what happens if you live with other people? So for example, I really like color. I like a lot of things. I like textures. My partner's more minimal, doesn't want a lot of things. I wanted a very colorful textured carpet. He was like, let's go for something a bit more simple. How do you find that compromise and still be happy?
Yeah, I think that is really tricky at times. I mean, especially if, like you're describing, you have a very kind of maximalist approach to things and you live with someone who wants a more minimalist approach to things, those can feel like there's never going to be any commonality. But I think this is one place where actually, again, paying attention to what you're drawn to can really help. And it might actually be a good time to introduce some kind of, tools of Pinterest or some kind of collection of, a place where you can collect different images together, because you're going to see these themes emerge and you're going to much more clearly be able to recognize, oh, I keep picking things that have this in common. And again, when we're talking about, like earlier, silhouettes or lines of different pieces of furniture, or maybe the types of prints that you're drawn to, you're going to be able to see those themes emerge a lot more clearly when you pull things together. And especially when you're kind of working against or ideally working with the opinions of another person, you can start to see those crossovers between what you're drawn to and what they're drawn to, right? And so it might not be, okay, we're going to get the biggest, brightest rug, that expresses the maximalist style, but it might be bringing in some smaller items that that are maximalist inside of whatever container they are in. So yeah, it's a framed piece of art on the wall. It's very maximalist within that frame. And then the rest of the space is a little more clean or something like that. So just being able to see everything laid out in front of you, I think can be a good kind of tool of compromise for those relationships, because it can be difficult. And the other thing I'll say is I think that being able to explain why you're drawn to something to the other person can go a long way, because they're often just reacting to, oh, I see the colors, I see the print, I see, whatever you're showing me, and it's a lot. But once you can start to say, well, the reason I like it is because it reminds me of this vacation that we took together 5 years ago or whatever. I'm not saying that that'll immediately get the thumbs up, but I think that that can be a nice way to kind of let the other person into your design brain.
Mm-hmm. I think I was trying to do that a bit because I did, go on Pinterest and find all these, pictures of homes that I liked. And he immediately went, oh my gosh, there's so much stuff in them. I can't do this. And I'm like, oh, no, I just like the colors and like there's lots of plants. I like plants. I don't necessarily want to have books everywhere. I do want books, but not everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly the right way to approach it, really. And yeah, it's understandable why, you see something first, you have that knee-jerk reaction, but then when you start to pick it apart, it becomes more digestible.
And I figured out that I really can't go the full maximalist route with my partner. I have to turn it back a little bit.
It's all about compromise.
Yeah. And do you follow any like design principles such as feng shui or anything else that maybe can help to guide us?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question a lot because there are definitely little bits and pieces that I've picked up from feng shui and also from kind of just other traditions of design and decorating. I wouldn't say that I ascribe to any of them 100%. I kind of see it as just, take what resonates with you. And I think that's also kind of how I think about design in general. But I do very much ascribe to the feng shui idea of not putting your bed directly opposite the doorway to your bedroom. There's a couple things from, kind of the guidelines in there that I really they do resonate with me. And I've always designed, spaces that I lived in knowing like, yeah, you can't have the energy rushing towards you as you're sleeping in bed, and you have to have the space under your bed completely clear. And, I don't know, like I said, that I don't know that I adopt any of it 100%, but there are these quote unquote rules where I look at it and I go, yeah, I don't know what it is, but I do feel better when I don't have, the doorway directly opposite me, or I do feel better when I don't see things under my bed, kind of making me feel weighed down. So I just kind of pick and choose from some of these different methodologies.
I guess the best thing is to learn about them. And then if something does resonate and does feel good, then you can use it. If not, then, can leave it by.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people, they get caught up with, oh, I have to follow every rule exactly. It's very all or nothing. And obviously I don't want to speak to, whether that's an acceptable way to interpret that as a tradition. But for me, I just think, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can really just kind of see what resonates with you and pull in these different elements and, kind of find where it fits in your life.
It's experimenting again.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. So speaking of, different practices that you've tried out, is there a practice that you, use in your own home to keep your home organized?
Yeah, one thing that I really do annually or maybe biannually is there's a program put out by Apartment Therapy that's called The Cure, and they just do a month-long series of different tasks that are kind of just to reset your home, and that's something that I've really started relying on. So they usually do one in January at the beginning of the year, and then usually one in the spring, and obviously you can do it whenever you feel like you need a reset. But that's something that I started doing a couple years ago. And I think two different elements of it are really helpful. One is you get to really see your home through fresh eyes. And sometimes literally, like sometimes they will have you take photographs of different spaces in your home, which I think is something that we really only do when we're kind of trying to show off, right? We only do it when our home already looks perfect. And so seeing your home when it doesn't look perfect, or seeing your home actually how you really use it through the lens of your phone basically gives you a different perspective on it, right? So you understand, of course, that like everything's a little bit flattened out when you take a little snapshot, but you also can kind of see, oh, I'm not using this room the way that I think I use this room. I've always scooched this chair over, to be closer to the television, or I've always thrown all these pillows off to another corner of the room because they're in the way, right? And of course, there's always going to be some element of, zhuzhing up your house to make it look exactly how you want it to. And that's natural. But if you're really time and time again not using your home the way that you've designed it to be used, that can start to indicate to you, that maybe some of those systems that we talked about earlier are kind of not working. Also, again, because everything is a little bit flattened out, seeing, this color of wall that's peeking through from the other room in the back of this photo where, you're mostly focused on a different room, things like that, it can really show you those kind of points of conflict that are maybe happening and open up some possibilities to try something new, especially in an area that might be a little bit forgotten. Hallways are, I have a lot of love for hallways because they're very much like the underdog of design. But I think in a weird way, the more effort that you put into an unexpected area, the more impact it has, whether people are coming over and they're seeing, oh, you have, I don't know, all these little framed prints in this weird little alcove in your hallway. It makes it feel intentional and can really make a special moment where it's kind of just a pathway from one place to the next.
I do think that, my hallways always sort of just become places where you put things, or like where you enter the room, but you enter the home, but there's nothing really there. And in some ways it could be good to like, put your personal style there because it's people's first impressions of your home.
Yeah, absolutely. I think entryways, are a great opportunity for that because, it's absolutely the first impression. And it's also the thing that's greeting you when you come home, right? So it's nice to give yourself a little reminder of something that feels very personal and very aesthetically pleasing just for yourself.
And so you said you do this about once a year?
Yeah, I do it either once or twice a year, and it will kind of encompass all these different sort of daily challenges, so the taking photos is only like one small part of it, but a lot of it does really have to do more with kind of organization. One day might be you have to tackle the junk drawer. Everybody has one. You have to take everything out, make that the most perfect space in your entire home for, as long as that lasts. And so there'll just be all these little tasks, but it just breaks it down into a very manageable kind of program over the course of a month. And once you've done it once, you kind of get into the rhythm and can redo that a couple times a year. And it just is so nice at the end of it to look around and go, wow, like I actually really like living here.
It sounds kind of like what I try to do between like university semesters where I'm like, okay, I'm not studying right now. I got to do all these things, except that because I don't have a timeline, I end up, I'll do that tomorrow. I'll do that next week. And then, you start back at uni and haven't done anything.
Yeah, I have a problem with accountability a little bit as well. So it's really good for someone like me who, if there was a teacher or a boss telling me I needed to do something, I would definitely get it done. But if it's just up to me, then, I need a little bit more accountability from having these daily tasks. And there's, community that goes along with it as well. People kind of comment, oh, I did this today. And, I took this task in a different direction than what it actually told me to do, but I think it's for the best and whatever. So it's nice to have kind of a support system when you're even doing something as simple as cleaning out a drawer that you've been avoiding.
I need help with drawers. I know that for sure.
The best is when you forget that you had cleaned it out and you open it and you're absolutely stunned by what you see.
Yeah. Although if you're not opening a drawer often, do you need to tidy it? I don't know.
It's a good question.
So we do have a few questions from the audience. And just for our listeners, if you are interested in, asking your questions to our experts, the best way to do that is to check our Instagram stories, usually the beginning of the week. And when we do have a guest, we'll post who it is, what we're talking about, and you can send in your questions. So today we've got one question, And this question is, can you discuss the balance between following trends and staying true to one's personal style when decorating a home?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is something that comes up a lot in fashion, of course, as well. There's a lot of crossover there. And it can be a tricky balance because, again, we're getting so much messaging about this is what the trend is. And actually, the trend cycles are compressing very rapidly, right? And I think it's just there's so many more resources now to draw from and to be able to kind of extract trends from. So it makes sense, but it can be really stressful to look around and say, oh, I was just told that the trend is this, and now it's already the next thing. And that can just be a really frustrating and unfulfilling experience. So my best advice really is to not put too much weight on the trends. I think that, again, being drawn to the things that you're drawn to is always going to be a better North Star for you because obviously your tastes may change, and certainly your tastes will change as you get different influences and see these different trends come and go and get exposed to new things. But that hopefully will have a longer life cycle than some of these trends that are really turning over quite quickly now. So I just like to think, first, really shop with your eyes and your heart. I know that sounds a little bit over the top, but really see what you're naturally drawn to. And I think a big part of that too is really going to spaces where you can be around and experience different items before you buy. Again, I am a big online shopper. I love online shopping. I'm really always excited by the ability to find so many new things, and especially smaller designers, smaller artists and artisans that, we all have access to now, which is amazing. But it really can't be overstated how important it is to be around and touch and engage with the items that you're buying for your house and, for your closet. If you are also, shopping for things for yourself, I think that's true in both cases. Because really at the end of the day, you're going to be living with these items, right? You're going to be living with these textures and these materials, and you'll be able to really see how every decision about creating these items was made a little bit more easily if you're actually engaging with them in the real world. So I think that gives you the opportunity to walk into a place and say, oh, I see that over there and it caught my eye, right? You hear that phrase again and again. This just caught my eye. Follow that, right? That is going to be a better North Star for you beginning your design process than just being told, and seeing kind of a flat image come over your screen of what is the new trend. And then once you kind of have those baselines established, right? When you have those items that you have invested in, you really love, they're really kind of tried and true for you, that's when you can start to incorporate some things that are maybe a little more trend-based, and hopefully those will be a little bit easier to swap in and out, like we talked about earlier, some textiles, some art, things like that. I love a trendy plant too. I know that plants should not be trendy, like plants are plants, right? But every once in a while, we find out what the new hot house plant is, and yeah, it's fun, right?
Yeah, definitely. But one thing that I've sort of noticed, I think more with fashion, just because I haven't bought that many like pieces of furniture. But like with fashion, you can kind of know what your style is. You can think you know what you want, but when you go shopping and you're like, I need a pair of black pants, and there's really only, because it's what's trendy right now, there's only maybe one color that's in style, or there's one cut that's in style. It can be really hard to find anything else. So like, do you have any tips for like, avoiding shopping the trends just because that's all that's available?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And I think that's definitely kind of the X factor that, complicates a lot of my advice, really. But I totally relate to that. Sometimes it's just, okay, that really fuzzy boucle material that we saw be very trendy in the past couple of years, like shearling look, that's all there is right now. That's what everyone's obsessed with. And you're going to see it in every single store, from like the very, very high end all the way down to, kind of the more accessible big box store. And you're looking around going, I don't like that. Why is that everywhere right now? Right. I think this is really a good opportunity to bring in items that are, vintage or secondhand, or, are really going to be divested from this trend cycle because they're from a time prior to this trend cycle, right? And I think that, it takes some legwork certainly to find things that are vintage, or that are, antique, or that are secondhand, that that kind of fit the bill of what you're looking for. Certainly, it's not going to be. Well, I was going to say it's not going to be, you can just type in exactly what you want and here it is. But actually, I think because of the increase in different platforms that we've seen over the past couple of years, it is getting a little bit easier, right? It's not only eBay. We now have a lot of different resale sites. We have Facebook Marketplace, which is weirdly a incredible treasure trove sometimes. So it will require some legwork, but I think it's a really nice way to do two things. One, get outside of that trend cycle. And then two, really bring a lot of character into your space, which when you are buying 100% of your home furnishings from, these mass retailers, even, the nice ones that I really love and go back to time and time again, everything starts to get kind of a flat look to it, right? Because it's all been purchased in the past year, 2 years, or it's all kind of drawing from the same couple materials or the same couple influences, and bringing in something that's older really can give you that, just that texture and patina that something new doesn't have. But again, it's going to be drawing on influences that these newer items aren't. So that's definitely, I think, like a great source of inspiration, and really just a good shopping source if you can, kind of bring some curiosity and playfulness to it, and consider it to be part of the journey, to delay a little bit of the gratification, but find something really special that no one else is going to have.
And that's the other thing is, if you're buying something that's maybe secondhand or a bit older, it can be a bit more unique.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I mean, I'm someone who really thinks a lot about quality, just in, the things that I choose and the things that I'm excited about. And 9 times out of 10, if you buy something that is older, it is going to have been made with not only better materials, but actual practices that will make it stand the test of time longer. Even a chair that's in a little bit of disrepair when you pick it up from Facebook Marketplace is probably made with, a higher quality of wood, or the joinery is, better than what you're going to see when you buy something at kind of a big box store. So it actually, I think, can be a really good investment, and not cost as much as some of these other investments that we have to make in our homes.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for sharing your thoughts about trends and personal style, and giving us some tips on, how to purchase some things that may be a bit more unique. So we're going to do the open mic section now. That's a chance for you to talk about something that you're passionate about. And actually, we're going to go back to the getting to know you section, because unfortunately, I forgot to ask you. I'd love to know, what's a course that has inspired you?
Yeah, so I actually have not come from too much formal education in design. It's really something that I've just kind of come to through the course of my career. My formal education was really just in writing, and then, through kind of being on the job in the fashion industry and in the design industry, that's kind of where my education has come from. So I do from time to time like to just check out, how other professionals in the field are kind of approaching their work. And this one was something that I found through Masterclass, which is definitely, a more kind of equitable, egalitarian way to access some of these people for sure. But Kelly Wersler is a designer who I have a lot of admiration for, and her style is not necessarily my style, but she's always doing something very interesting. And she had this class on Masterclass where she really was taking you through a project from start to finish. And what really kind of stayed with me about her approach was she was taking all these elements that were already part of the built space that she was working in, and then starting to find ways to mirror them and echo them and, kind of rhyme with them in her actual design. So, she would notice, oh, the molding on this door, the trim on this door is done in a specific way. It has this sort of line to it. It, has this kind of profile. It's very interesting, kind of these architectural details. And kind of going back to what we talked about earlier of, do I pick this style? Do I pick this style? She, instead of imposing a new style onto the space, was really looking at what was the space already saying to her, even though it was, pretty much empty. And then how could she find ways to incorporate some of those same details in, the trim on this sofa is going to have like a beading effect that looks similar to, the molding on this door or something like that. And I think, in addition to that kind of being the idea that I was mentioning earlier about design being referential, it also is really, again, about noticing, about being able to really take in all the fine details of a space and see what is going to be something that you can actually draw from and start to give new life to. So that would be kind of the first course that I would credit some design know-how to. And then the other thing I think is not exactly maybe how this question was intended, but I have been taking ceramics classes for a number of years and doing pottery where you're actually like throwing on a wheel. And it was something that I, just always wanted to do and felt kind of drawn to, but had never really had time for, and didn't really think it was going to have any kind of, professional application or anything. But I found that just being able to actually, again, engage with the materiality and the way that something is made, in a very direct way, as opposed to, again, like writing about the shape of something or, reading about the materials that were chosen. The immediacy of that was not only just, really interesting and fun to get familiar with, but really makes me think about design in a different way and makes me think about all the choices that designers are making when they create something in a different way, because, everything is a decision. So I think that really kind of changed my perception of what this work is about, and also what it means to really create objects and create spaces that a person wants to engage with.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. Do you have any pots that you could send a picture of it to us?
Yes,
ceramics. Sorry, I just picked pots because I'm like, that's what comes to my mind.
No, I definitely, that's where you start, and you do end up spending a lot of time there. Yeah, I could definitely send a couple snapshots. I have also some different mugs that I made, and I won't say that any of it is very virtuosic, but it's fun to kind of get engaged with it and feel what it's like to actually be the maker instead of the critic of the maker.
Yeah, I think sometimes we can be a bit critical of things. And then when you realize what actually goes into it, it's a whole new thing. And you have a real respect for the makers.
Absolutely. And also just, looking at everything in my house all of a sudden, like, oh, so they decided to, okay, that's like a thicker wall, or like I look at a picture and I'm like, oh, the handle, they decided to go with that kind of handle. Okay. Just really, makes you notice all the details.
That's great. And if our listeners want to find out more about you and your work, where can they find you?
The best place to find me is emilybihl.com, which is BIHL. That's kind of the hub of a lot of different things that I do. And if you're interested in kind of the aesthetics that I've been describing, my side project is a place where I'm curating together different small makers and designers, and it's called Shop Healer, so shophealer.com.
Great, thank you for that. And we'll put those in the show notes so everyone can find them very easily. Thanks so much for talking to me today.
Thank you so much. It's been lovely.
You've been listening to Room by Room, produced by the Home Organisation Science Labs. a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes like this from across 10 life management perspectives can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and other podcasting apps available on your smart devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it so we can grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at ho.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Gabriella Joustra. Thanks for tuning in.